Welcome to Coffee Break with Rachel V. Hill, taking a daily look at the biggest stories in Denver sports and interacting live with you, the Coffee Break fam. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of joe, and enjoy your coffee break. Here's your host, Rachel V. Hill.
Oh, another day of Broncos OTAs, which we're always excited about. During these times when we're only able to see the team once a week, once every 2 weeks, you get really excited and you kind of deep dive into what you're hoping you can find out about this team just from the little that you get to watch. Again, we only go out there for like a 2-hour practice, sometimes an hour and a half, and you really just try and pay attention to different names, different players, and everything else of that nature. So we are pre-recording today's episode because I'm out at Broncos actually right now as we speak. Right now is beginning to be just the end of practice where the team's going to wrap everything up. For the first 15 minutes or so, usually when we get out there, we're allowed to record stuff, which is when you guys typically see all of the stretching. And in case you've ever wondered, I mean, like, why don't they ever show us any more than like the stretching or some of the really basic drills? You're actually not allowed to film after a certain point. And sometimes even during our filming period, they'll be like, everybody put your cameras away. We're not allowed to record anything of this nature. And so that's why I feel like I always used to watch newscasts or anything as an example. And I was like, why do they always just show them stretching? Like, I want to see more. And it's because we're actually not able to record a lot more. But as we look into OTAs, there's a few names that have popped out. And of course, everybody is very curious about the quarterback battle. So I wanted to recap just a little bit about, what we saw last week from OTAs, but also kind of what I'm looking for this week at OTAs. It's one of these times where, again, we're getting such small information, such little information, but you have to take that and really see who is standing out. And I feel like the major thing everybody paid attention to last week, which Sean Payton is very particular about every single thing he does. So today out at practice, I'm going to be very, very curious to see, do we see Jarrett Stidham or Zach Wilson with the ones? Because we saw Bo Nix, which I think was very intentional. Cecil Lammey was on with me last week right after practice, and he was like, that was very intentional. You could have had any of the other quarterbacks out there starting with the ones, but you have your rookie QB. So if Bo Nix is again starting with the ones, I think it's going to be telling us something for sure. And Bo Nix was he was like an energetic puppy dog, if that makes any sense. And that's no disrespect. Like, I don't say that in like a kid, way or anything. He was just very excited to be out there. He was high-fiving all the guys. You could tell he was really trying to build that chemistry with a lot of them. And I think that was really important for him to go out there and not just be the young dog that's going out there and whatever. Zach Wilson was very quiet. Like, there was different attitudes from all of the guys. He was very quiet. He was in the back, I think, just really taking it in. But Sean Payton even said that he's picked up this offense very, very quickly. He's got a really strong arm. So in case you're worried about, who's going to be the guy that can really just sling the ball out there, Zach Wilson might be your best option. Now, of course, Will Peterson and I talked earlier this week on Coffee Break about who we actually think the battle's between, because it needs to come down to 2 players. It can't be a 3 QB battle. That's just not realistic. That's not going to help this team at all. If you think about it, that is them splitting it literally 1/3 of the time. Like, you can't build chemistry with your wide receivers, your tight ends, or anything of that nature if you're only getting 1/3 of the snaps with them. You have to get to 50-50 if you're going to by training camp, and then you can figure out who's going to be your starter and really allow them to build that relationship, because 3 is a mess. 3 is a bit of a party, and 3 can have a lot of drama, and it can just be a mess. And I personally thought it was Jarrett Stidham and Bo Nix, and Will thinks that it's Zach Wilson and Bo Nix, 2 of the young guns out there. Jarrett Stidham did talk about, he's like, this is the first time in my career that I get to be the veteran out there. And, he's still young. You had Russell Wilson, who was in the locker room last year. Like, he's still this young gun in a sense as well, but you have 2 guys who are even younger. And what I also think is fascinating is how young this roster actually is as a whole. Like, Brandon Jones came over, obviously, from the Dolphins. He replaces Justin Simmons, and he was talking about how he's also like the vet in the room now, and he has to be out there for these younger guys. And he's like, I've always been the young one. It's such a young roster. It's going to be very interesting to kind of see how it all plays out, because when you're young, you make mistakes. You want those veteran guys to be out there too. And there's also trade rumors going on right now. I feel like it's all over the place. But getting back to recapping just last week, so I felt like Stidham had no urgency. Like, he just felt like he was the cool kid on the block going out there, coming into the huddle late. There's not a lot of urgency out there. Again, I've been here. I've done that kind of mentality. You had Bo Nix out there high-fiving everybody, running down the field to give guys high fives. And then you had Zach Wilson, who was just kind of quiet, but was really showing his strength and his arms. And it was really good to see. But again, you're watching individually how each one's reacting with different guys, how they're processing things, how fast they're able to do it. When we see 7-on-7, it's like, okay, who's going where and what's the dynamic looking like around these QBs, because it's all a little bit different. It's very much the same, but there's little quirks in there that you're like, okay, that's a little different. I think what also is fascinating is what the Broncos are going to do with Garrett Bowles, because of course we heard ESPN's got rumors that they're going to be picking up the phones and calling people looking for trade. And Garrett Bowles had been one of those names. How can we all forget when he last year, after he talked about it being the same old crap, how they were moving on from different QBs and his only job is to protect the QB. We've actually got the audio so we can play it, but it's that same old crap line that we hear from Garrett Bowles.
What changes the most when you're going through all those quarterbacks?
I don't know, man. My job is just to block the quarterback. So, I protect them on the field. I protect them off the field. That's what the Broncos pay me to do. So, I don't. As frustrating as it is, it's frustrating for me since I've been here for so long, and it's just the same crap over and over again. But at the same time, I got to go out there and do my job, and that's what I'm going to continue to do.
Now, of course, this was just after, like, they're in the locker room. The season has been really hard. You're going through a transition period. This is right after Russell Wilson had announced that he was getting benched. So I can understand the frustration coming from Garrett Bowles. And I actually don't think that the Broncos will move on from him. I think they need a little bit of a veteran presence out there, especially with Luke Wattenberg taking the number one, the starter center role. I think having Garrett Bowles out there can really immensely help this team. And again, just having that veteran role. And Garrett Bowles has actually put on a little bit of weight. When I saw him out there last week, I was like, oh, he looks like he's gotten a little bit bigger for sure, which it never hurts to have your offensive line like beefed up a little bit as long as they continue to move quickly. So that was interesting, but I don't think that they're going to move on from Garrett Bowles. I know his name has been tossed around because he can be the unhappy guy or whatever, but who can blame him? I think the Broncos country is even unhappy with the rotation of quarterbacks that we've had since Peyton Manning. It's like every single year. All right, who's it going to be this year? What's it going to be this year? I mean, even going into last year with Russell Wilson, you were kind of just waiting for what was going to be the breaking point, the snapping point that we were going to see Jared Stidham based on how much they paid him on his contract. So it doesn't surprise me one bit that, the players are sick of it. Courtland Sutton's probably sick of it. Every single year you have essentially a new quarterback that you're having to learn from. So I get it from a certain degree. I think it's pathetic that Courtland Sutton's not out at OTAs when a lot of other players are. He's still working out down there in Miami with a trainer. I don't like that. I want him to be here. I want him to be back here in Denver working out with these new quarterbacks, trying to build that chemistry, not just trying to get a new contract. Like, for me, I've always stood on the point of, you want a new contract, then come show you're a part of this team and you want to be here. And to me, he just hasn't shown that. That's Sean Payton, to George Payton, to the rest of management over there at the Broncos headquarters. Maybe they see it differently, and that could be the case. Sean Payton really doesn't seem all that worried about Courtland Sutton, but I mean, it was definitely noticeable that he wasn't out there. And I find it interesting to see the relationship between Courtland Sutton and Tim Patrick when they come back. Tim Patrick seemed very timid last week, like just very, very timid. Like, he didn't trust it 100% on anything that he was doing. And how can you blame him? He had an Achilles and an ACL tear in back-to-back years. That is so tough mentally to come back from. Like, I remember everyone saying after he tore his Achilles that they were like, he's done. Like, there's no way he can come back and play football. He's just going to be done. He's going to retire, and it's going to be a huge blow for this Broncos offense. I always called him Mr. Consistent before all of the injuries, and I feel like it was Mr. Consistent too with the injuries. I could not believe it last year when he went down in training camp. It was like nobody expected that to ever happen to him again, and it was just so heartbreaking watching him get carted off and everything. And it was like, there's no way this could happen again to this guy. And of course, he does go out there. But he's not the only guy that has dealt with injuries. Obviously, he had season-ending injuries. You got Greg Dulcich, who's also out there. And Greg Dulcich, I know his name has been on the chopping block to possibly get moved, and they don't expect him to be back anytime either. He's still obviously dealing with the rehab, but it is also really interesting because Lucas Kroll, whose name we're going to get into in just a second, he looks like a stud of a tight end, and I feel like I'm going to preach this a ton. You can even hear it when Sean Payton talks about him. But, Sean Payton also talked on Greg Dulcich and essentially how he's doing, how he's rehabbing, but then also mentions Lucas Kroll. So take a listen.
Man, I thought he's had a good week. And I said, if you didn't notice, everyone in the media was looking down at the rosters to see who 85 was. And I said, someday soon they're going to know who 85 is. He's looking sharp.
someday soon they're going to know who 85 is, and that's the truth. He reminds me of, I just don't even know, like a Travis Kelce, but not a Travis Kelce in a sense. Like, he is just big. He's this big dog. He can catch the ball nicely. He clearly reads the reads very well as well. His footwork seems to be great. Like, overall, he's just impressive to watch. And you can see him coming literally from a mile away. Like, he is massive, it feels like. And to have somebody out there who hopefully just can stay healthy, like how dynamic this offense can be if they have a true tight end. I feel like that's something this team has been missing for so long. And we obviously see all throughout the NFL all the time now how important it is to have that tight end who can also be a weapon and can be that bigger body. I think it's going to be very interesting. So that's one thing I'm definitely going to be looking forward to seeing this week when it comes to OTAs. I'm going to be watching how Lucas Kroll looks again. Was he just having a really good day last Thursday, or how is he looking today? Are we still having the same connection if it's a Zach Wilson or if it's Jared Stidham with the ones as we were seeing with Bo Nix? It's going to be interesting. That's like the one name that I'm really going to be looking for, or I guess I should say number, because there's no names on the jerseys at this point in practice. It's the numbers. So 85, how's he looking? How's he connecting with all of the QBs? I think it's going to be really, really interesting. So I'm looking forward to that. And of course, I'm looking forward to seeing more about the QBs. Is Sean Payton going to have Jared Stidham be with the ones? Is he going to have Zach Wilson? Is he really going to try and change it up? Or is it going to be Bo Nix again and he's just going to be out there and it's all going to be like, okay, well, that's what's going to end up happening for sure. Another thing I'm going to be paying attention to this week is the running backs. And Javonte Williams has not looked the same since he overcame his obviously injury, the busted knee. I felt so bad for him. Last year, he came back a little bit and he looked more like himself, but he was never 100%. He was never that guy where it was all the memes of Javonte Williams carrying the entire team on his back when he was like running with 4 or 5 guys trying to take him down. Like, he never got back to that point. And he does look good this year. Like, he looked good last year at practice or last week at practice, but he hasn't looked like that same beast. And I don't know if he's also timid like Tim Patrick is. So I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to him as well. And again, you're also just kind of paying attention to, some new names. Josh Reynolds, new wide receiver coming out there, coming from the Lions, who's been known for having some dropped passes. How is he having that chemistry? There's going to be a lot of interesting questions around the wide receiver room because there's a lot of talent and there's some names people have obviously like known to grow and love. Brandon Johnson, for example, little Jordan Humphreys. Like, there's going to be some names that people probably know that are household, if you're a Denver Broncos fan, household names that end up getting cut because there's so many wide receivers right now. Sean Payton is clearly trying to figure out which way he wants to go. My only concern is you have a lot of big wide receivers. There's a lot of big guys. Josh Reynolds, big dude. Cortland Sutton, big guy. Tim Patrick, big guy. But do you have speed? So Marvin Mims Jr., how big of a role is he going to play this year? That's one thing I'm going to be paying attention to as well today, out at practice for OTAs. How is he going to look? Because you don't have a lot of speed. You got a lot of thunder out there, but you don't have a lot of lightning, and they definitely need some lightning. We know that this is going to be a quick-moving offense. You know that whoever it is, whether it be Bo Nix, whether it be Zach Wilson. I almost said Russell Wilson. I'm like, I know it's not Russell Wilson. He's no longer here. Or it's going to be Jared Stidham. It's going to be quick. Get the ball out of your hands super fast. So they're going to have to be fast. That's the one thing about this offense. It's going to be very quick. It's going to be very speedy. And what that actually looks like, considering you just got a lot of big dudes who can hopefully, psych out wide receivers here or psych out defensive line. Oh my goodness. Psych out defensive backs easily. Excuse me. It's going to be interesting. I'll be curious to kind of see how plays are lining up too and what that's looking like. I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about this offense when it comes to the Broncos this year. I'm not going to lie. Maybe it's because I'm not exactly sure what it's going to look like. And that's why I have this idea of like, okay, I can see so many different possibilities of who's utilized in certain ways, but I just don't know exactly what it's going to look like. So it's hard for me to be like, oh, I think they're going to be a really good offense or whatever. And again, you have so many different quarterback options. Like last year, we knew Russell Wilson was going to be the starting QB, but it was like, okay, this year, here we go into this quarterback battle yet again. And I really hope that they do just cut it down to 2 guys, but I have a feeling we're not going to see that by any means. So it's just one of those things, you guys, where you're not exactly sure what you're going to be getting out of this team. And if they're going to be making moves here in the next couple of weeks, come August, after they see what happens at training camp, will they be picking up the phones? There's a lot of unanswered questions, and I think that it can be a little frustrating for Broncos country. It can be frustrating for the media because we want to know what it's going to look like. But at the exact same time, there's so much potential on this team, and potential can be a really dangerous word. We saw it with Jerry Jeudy. He had so much potential. Well, he never got that point. Cortland Sutton, I feel like there's potential, but are we ever going to see that full potential? Lucas Kroll, potential. Is he going to be utilized to the best of his ability? Potential is a very dangerous word, so I always be careful when I'm throwing it out there. But there is a lot of potential on this team. Now, can they actually develop and look good and go around the offense that Sean Payton is trying to build? Potential with Bo Nix. Can he actually be the franchise QB? Colin, I can't even think of his name right now, you guys. It's blank in my mind. One of a very, very important hosts. Colin. I can't think of hers. Collinsworth. There we go. It's definitely the week, a few days after a long weekend for sure. But he said Broncos found their guy. Looks like they found their guy in Bo Nix. He's hearing really, really good things about Bo Nix. So hopefully that can be the truth. Now, we also know Sean Payton and them have a good relationship. So you're hearing it from probably inside the building is my guess. But Sean Payton likes what he sees. How can we disagree with him when he obviously has developed so many quarterbacks as well? So is going to do it for today, guys. Just obviously kind of a little brain dump for myself, too, of all the things I'm really going to be paying attention to tomorrow. I've got my list down of everybody that I'm trying to really pay attention to, dive into, and see and be able to bring you guys some really good content for tomorrow as well. So I appreciate you guys, as always, for spending just a little bit of your time with me here on this Thursday. I cannot believe it's already Thursday. Broncos OTAs day 2 for the media to check out and see what's going on. So I appreciate you guys, as always, and we will see you guys tomorrow. Bye, everybody.